Welcome again to today's webinar, AI and Agent Foundry, presented by Planet Technologies for the Defense Industrial Base here in August of 2026. AI and Foundry is what we'll be talking about today, and I'm honored to introduce Jason Griffith, who is our Director of Cloud Services, James Murphy, one of Planet's architect of Power Platform Dynamics. They're going to be walking through some content and doing a demo as well. Also with us today is Larry Cage, who is also on the Power Platform team, and Ken Nugler, a cloud strategist supporting our customers as well. For more information about today's program, make sure you check out the links at the end of the program and blogs on this topic that were posted this week. With that, let's get started. We do want to start with just an update on the DOW statement on CMMC. This is essentially what we had also talked about last month. If you don't know, which I think most people would, the DIB has suspended CMMC Phase 2 requirements for 60 days starting back in July. The Phase 2 requirements would have required C3PAO assessments validating NIST 800-171 for Level 2 certification for DIB contractors. It should be noted that DFARS and ITAR organizations still must maintain controls, document an SSP, and manage their POAMs. And the bottom line is that timelines may shift, but the duty to secure federal data does not. If you have any questions on this topic, feel free to put them in the chat. Or again, you can always contact us at go-planet.com. As we do with most of our webinars, we like to start with the poll question. This one specifically is focusing about how your organization might be using development tools today, AI development tools. So if you're using things like GitHub Copilot, Codex, or Claude, we ask you to give a quick anonymous response there, and we'll take a look at those results here momentarily before Jason starts his program. Not surprising that many organizations are focused on enabling their developers to be able to use those AI tools. As a personal anecdote, I've been using them just for some fun projects on the side. And even though I've stepped away from real development for many years, it certainly takes an interesting step towards revisiting how to work on those more modern platforms. Appreciate everybody's response. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jason to get through the program.
Thanks, Matt. James and I were really looking forward to today's presentation, and this serves as part two from last month's conversation where we talked about how we established the Azure environments and architectures to support leveraging tools like Copilot, GitHub Copilot, to enable workstations for developers to use these tools. So as part of today's agenda, we're just going to spend a few minutes, recap a couple of those conversation points if you were unable to attend the last one. But really where we're going to spend the bulk of today is having James as a developer, how he logs into these environments and uses tools like Visual Code Studio to interact with Foundry and to build a couple of sample agents and what that experience looks like. So, a lot of the conversations today is really starts with initializing the platforms and governance. But less time is really talked about how do we, now that we have the platforms, how do we now provide our developers access to these environments and develop agents using the tools. So really the problem was centered around, how do I enable my pro code developers to use software tools for AI assisted development projects? And this could be building agents. It could be building software packages leveraging the AI-assisted development tools. But really where it comes down into these CMMC governed environments is what's the approach? And the one that we had referred to last time, and there's a couple, but a simple path was to stand up an Azure commercial environment and provide AVD workstations. There's another method that is a little more complex, more architecture driven, but where you could potentially use GitHub Copilot, bring your own keys, and to be able to access those tools in the Azure government environment. So depending on the experience that you want to bring to your development team, there's a couple of paths. And so we won't go into all those details, but just recap a couple of those areas. And so the limitations that DIB organizations are facing is because you're in these GCC high boundaries, tools like GitHub Copilot at the SaaS level aren't available yet for FedRAMP environments. So you're slightly at a disadvantage to, utilize these tools, which is actually one of the faster growing use cases of AI today. You also, within the commercial environment, if you go through a build, load, deploy high methodology, you have access or limitations in large language model choice and access. And, your developer workstations are aligned to CMMC requirements. So accessing non-FedRAMP tools is limited. And so we had walked through an Azure commercial design overview that gave an example of the services that could be utilized to support it. These specific developer workstations that leverage GitHub runners, GitHub tooling, and really to deploy Visual Studio Code, VS Code, with GitHub Copilot integrations and that software built into those environments to speed up your development capabilities. There is a reference architecture that we had provided and talked through that really centered around that. We would call it standard, but it's really your shared hub model for shared services, your Foundry instance to be able to access models and deploy solutions and capabilities, and then your Azure workstations, AVD workstations that come pre-deployed with Intune and other capabilities to leverage the GitHub Copilot capabilities. So with that as the background, we're going to just have another poll question while we switch screens and introduce James Murphy to walk through the demonstration.
Yeah, Jason, this poll is focused on future topics for our cloud office hours. We began doing this a couple of months ago, and we've actually been making sure that the topics we're addressing are those that folks in the community want to hear. So you see a couple of different options there as well. We'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are on that, or if there's a topic that's not listed there, feel free to put it in the chat, and we'll take that on advisement as well. And with that, we'll hand it over to James.
Okay, hopefully everyone can see my screen. And thank you, both of you, for the introductions. But just to recap, I'm James Murphy. I'm an architect with the Power Platform team. And today what I'm going to be showing you is how to work with your Foundry within VS Code. So just to start off the demo, we're not going to spend much time in here, but we have a brand new project, nothing in it, blank, just stood up within Azure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect to this project and create a couple of agents. So I'm going to switch over to VS Code. And just in case there's anyone not familiar with VS Code, it is Microsoft's development IDE. It is extremely lightweight. You can download it right now. It's free. And it has an absolute ton of extensions which can plug into your Azure environment today so that you can work with it. So I'm going to go to extensions really quickly. There's two things that we're going to need in order to work with Foundry. So I'm going to click on extensions. Once again, there is just hundreds of thousands of extensions available. Microsoft has official extensions that are extremely easy to find. But there's two that we want. The first is just going to be our Azure extension. This is going to provide your connectivity into your Azure environment so that you can work with Foundry. The second is right up at the top here, Foundry Toolkit for VS Code. So once you have both of those things installed, they're going to show up here on the left-hand navigation. So here's my Azure. I'm going to click on this just to show you. Now, you're probably not going to have this many resources and this many environments when you're officially connecting. I have a lot of sandboxes, of course, so I'm connected to several things at once. But in order to connect to your tenant or your account, you're just going to add account and you're going to log in like you would just with a regular Azure login using your credentials. That basically is all you really need to do to connect your VS Code into your Azure so that other extensions can use this. So the other one that we're going to spend all of our time in is Foundry Toolkit. So I'm going to click on this, and we have this broken up into our Foundry Toolkit resources at the top, and then developer tools at the bottom. So you can see that I know I only had it open very briefly, but I am connected to that brand new empty project that I created, Project Default in East US. So the Foundry Toolkit resources provides pretty much all of the access that you would need in order to create a new agent or configure that agent or set it up, or even tracing it, trying to figure out, how it's performing, how many tokens it's using, and so on. So I'm going to go through a couple of these really quickly. So first is models. Now, because I'm an administrator, I have the ability to add new models to my Foundry. But right now, we're keeping it pretty simple and keeping it pretty lightweight. So I really only have 2 AI models put in here. But I want to click on Add Model very briefly to show you everything that's available. Now, of course, your tenant might vary slightly based upon what you have access to and what models you're using. But in the model deployment, we'll wait just a second for this to come up. So 1 second. So we'll come back to this, but the model deployment allows you to deploy new AI models into your tenants. They could be Claude, they can be, actually they're categorized by even the vendor, Anthropic, and so on. Then you have your agents inside of here. So we don't have any agents right now, but your agents are really going to be broken up into 2 things. You have your prompt agent, and then you have your hosted agent. Those are really the main 2. We'll cover both of those today. And then you have tools accessible to you. So what tools is going to be is it's going to be resources that your bot can basically access. You know what, I'm going to get into tools once we start creating an agent, because that'll really give you a better picture of what you can actually put in these prompt agents and how you can work with the coded agents. So we're going to go down into the developer tools here, and we want to go ahead and create an agent. So we're going to be given the choice. Once again, we're going to work with either prompt agents or agents with full code control. So we're going to start with the simple prompt agent right now, and that would be the design an agent without code. So I'm going to open this up, and there actually is not that much that we need to provide this in order to get our agent up and running. So I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new agent that just says English to Spanish. And once again, we have all of our models inside of here. Because the models were still loading, and due to time, I'm not going to browse our models. You can do that at your own convenience, but just know there's an extensive list of AI models that you can use. I'm just going to use ChatGPT 5 Mini. So then once you get to instructions, you can actually, there's Inspire Me and Generate, but it's basically just assistance in getting some clear basic text for what you want your agent to actually do. So I'm going to go ahead really quickly and copy some text that I already have set up here for my English to Spanish agent. So you are a professional translator, translate all English text into Spanish and return only Spanish text. So I'm going to jump before I save this and try out our very first message. I do want to show you tools that are available inside of here. Now, we're not actually going to leverage any tools because there really isn't anything necessary to leverage inside of just our basic English to Spanish bot, but it'll give you a really good picture of what is available. So right off the bat, these are already configured without me doing anything inside of my Azure AI Foundry. So I can enrich the data with web search. If I have any indexed search documents, put in Azure AI search, I can bring those automatically in the document. I'm sorry, in the agent. Or I can actually go in the catalog, and this has a very long list of other tools that we can actually integrate with. The full list of tools should be available and broken out by your tenant type, whether it's DoD or GCC High or GCC or so on. And it'll give you the availability of each tool. So the one that I'm basically just going to point out really quickly here is in my everyday work, do a lot of Dataverse work. So if I had some Dataverse tables that contained, let's say, cases, customer interactions, and I want my agent to not only have visibility into all of those things, I want it to perform actions against those records. I can basically configure the agent to do that just using my instructions and bringing in my Microsoft Dataverse tools. So I'm going to drop out of the tools menu because once again, we're not going to add anything to this agent. We're just keeping it extremely simple. But I've done all of the work that I need to do right now to basically configure my agent and get it running inside of Foundry. So the only thing I need to do is save this agent to Foundry. I get a little window that it's saving, and now it's completely ready to go. So say hello agent. And it responds back. I don't think we need to give it any more sample prompts. I think you all get the idea. But this is really all I needed to do just to make this one simple agent. And instructions are really going to be your key to making it work to how you want it to work. You can bring in those tools. You can bring in actually customized components. But the instructions are going to be what you're going to use to tell the bot how all of these things work together. Now, one thing I actually neglected to mention is that we have our code. So this actually did generate code behind the scenes. Here's all the code in my bot. I'm not going to go through this code, but the end goal that we really want is we want our agents integrated with our source control. So this does give you the ability to basically get this agent working through source control, and you'll see some more in-depth code in just a second for our next agent that we're going to build. Okay, so I think we've covered most everything inside of here. You can do some pretty extensive tracing in here. So you can actually trace the amount of tokens used. You can actually dive into the conversation and find more detailed information about response, reply, all of that. So this actually gets pretty deep. I mean, you can apply a huge amount of tracing to this. If you actually even have, let's say, adapters, so a custom channel that is not readily available that you want your bot to tie into, you can do all of your tracing through here too. So what I'm going to do now is let's close this one out because this agent is done. It is actually deployed into our environment. So just to show you that it's deployed and available, I'm going to click on agents again. And you can see that now we have a prompt agent. It was created right now, and it is deployed to our AI Foundry. So the next thing that I'm going to do is create a slightly more complex agent. So I'm going to click on Create Agent down here again. And we're going to say Create Encode with full control. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to use a sample. So this is a pretty overwhelming interface, but it has a lot of really good pre-built bots. So I'm going to go so far as to say that you pretty much never have to start from scratch when you're creating either an agent that's a prompt agent or an agent that is a coded agent such as this. So we have all of these templates to search on, and I can check my preferred language. So in my case, I would like to do C#. And then you have the different frameworks or the different sort of responses this might have. So we normally work with this response protocol type, but you can have something like this one where you have a WebSocket connection. So I'm working with C#, but just in case you don't have the C# SDK downloaded, or your Visual Studio is not actually configured properly to work with C# or Python, you have just some built-in tools for checking. So either I can do Python, check workspace requirements, or C# check workspace requirements. And it'll either tell you what you need to do, it'll give you some links to download and install things, or it will just do what it did here, which is give me the green check mark and say, you're good to go. You can start developing in C# with this agent. So we have a lot of agents in here. The one that I'm going to choose, though, is going to be somewhere down here. We have a note-taking agent. So every one of these agents does have a GitHub that you can go to. You can review the code. You can review the README. So I'm really quickly going to open this up. I don't want to spend much time in this. I just want to show you that it's available and that it has all of the instructions for what it does, how you customize it, and how you install it. Microsoft is very, very actively adding to this library as well. You can see that the commit date for this one was last month. You'll find actually most of them are much sooner than last month. But I'm going to go ahead and click on my note-taking agent, and then I'm going to click next. So when I opened up Visual Studio before this demo, I didn't want to spend time loading my extensions, but I did open a blank folder on my desktop called AI Foundry Demo. So what we're doing here is we're creating a brand new agent, and I'm going to place it in this folder. I don't have source control hooked up, but you would imagine that in a real development environment, this is going to be a source control folder that is tied to GitHub or DevOps. Once again, I have my model that I can deploy, or I have my model I can select. So I'm going to select GPT-5 again. Excuse me. Okay, so I'm going to wait just a moment because it is basically installing the agent on my machine right now. So it does give me basically everything that I need as a foundation for working with this project. So I think it should be done. It usually only takes a second, but you can see that it already basically put everything that I need to work with this. It has Docker containers on here. It has basically all of my code. It has everything I need for deploying. So it's all set up for me at this time. So I need to do one small thing though, before I start working with this. So I did show you before that I'm connected to many different Azure environments. So it actually doesn't know where I want to either deploy this to or what AI Foundry I want to work with. So you most likely will not have to do this next step, but I do want to show you that it's available just in case you need it. So I have my project, and if I right click on this, it basically gives me a few options. So I can copy the endpoint, the API key, or the OpenAI endpoint. So I'm going to copy the project endpoint. And then in my environment, which is just local, only specific to when I work with this on my local host, I'm just going to paste it right inside of here. So there's one more thing that I need to do. Now, once again, this is specific to me. So I want to review the project code. So I would stand this up, and then I would need to make all of the changes that really do accommodate what I am trying to accomplish in this bot. I'm going to change my authentication mechanism. So right now it's default Azure credential, and I'm just going to put this to Azure CLI credentials. That is how I'm currently connected. Once again, you probably will most likely not have to do that, but I am just going to do it for the purposes of this demo so that it knows what credentials to use when it's testing. So we have some pretty extensive code that it generated, and if you actually get into some of the other more in-depth models, it has a lot built for you. It has basically our main our main interface that we're going to use is this invocation handler, and it's pretty easy to customize this because it really does generate a lot of what we need. So even if you're not a coder, I'm sure that you can look at this and understand basically what this is kind of doing. So the note-taking bot is really supposed to take down text, compile it inside of a note, and then give you options to work with that file as you would a binary file. So let's just pretend that I've reviewed all this. I've made any changes that I need to make. So everything should be set up and ready for me. So I'm just, it looks like I already did a save all, so we're all good there. I can either click on the run and debug, or I can just hit F5. So it's very, very simple to get these up and running. So it brought up a little build terminal for me, and it's going to build this. And then just as the prompt agent did, it's going to go ahead and open our, I want to get the name right. It's going to open our agent inspector once it's done building. Okay. So this looks a little bit different than our prompt bot. And that is because there is far more that I can do with this bot in terms of tracing, passing messages to it, integrating it with other services, and so on. So I have some other messages I'm going to paste in here, but I'm just going to say, create a note called today's notes. And it's basically connecting to our AI Foundry instance and pulling down all of our security and configuration right now. So this might take a second, but while this is happening, you can probably already see that there's a great amount of traceability that I can do inside of this. So, you know, we have our brand new notes that we created, and let me give it another message really quickly. Once again, I'm passing it JSON because I really do want to show you the level of detail that can be put into this, and that the message isn't just text. The message can be a variety of different data types that goes into it. So while it's going ahead and compiling my notes, I don't have any traces going on, but there is some pretty detailed tracing that you can do. This would actually be found under the evaluations. So under evaluations, I can attach some monitoring tracing tools to this and evaluate if the bot is kind of performing. So imagine this is almost like a kind of like a unit test that you would put against your agent. So here I have my tracing. I'm not going to start collecting because it actually is quite a lot that it collects and compiles, but I do want to show this to you. I can basically make sure that this agent is optimized according to how I've set it up and is doing everything that I need as far as reaching out to the proper data sources, compiling the files, storing the files in the way that I need, and so on. So I'm going to go ahead and say that this agent is looking great. So the final thing really is that I just need to deploy it. So you see right now that it's running just on my local host. So it just created this port 8088, and it's just running here. We obviously need to get it off of my local host, and we need to get it to Foundry. So Microsoft has made it incredibly simple. So over here in the left-hand side, you can see that we have deployed to Microsoft Foundry. So I'm going to go ahead and simply click on that. And once again, I feel like Microsoft has done a fantastic job making this much simpler. So this is all I have to do. In fact, I don't even think I have to touch any of these. So it's going to compile my code for me into a zip, and then it's just going to deploy it as remote. And I can either say this is an existing agent or this is a brand new agent. Of course, we don't have an existing agent to overwrite, but in this case, that's all I need to do. So I just click next, and it gives me a few more options. Now, most of the time, you probably don't want to change this that much. It'll auto detect if it's Python, if that's what you're using, or if it's .NET, if you're using C# or any of the other languages under the umbrella of .NET. And then runtime, you don't need to configure, and memory, we would just keep this at a minimum until we can run some more diagnostics, tracing or monitoring against this. So we're all done without us actually even clicking anything but deploy to Microsoft Foundry. So I'm going to go ahead and deploy, and this is going to connect once again to my Foundry instance. It's going to zip everything, and then it's going to deploy it. And that's it. So it's done. I'm going to go back into agents, and I can go into hosted agent, and you see right here that now that agent that I just built, that's in code, and I know we don't have a repo for the purposes of this demo, but it would be inside of my repository as well, is created and running inside of our Foundry instance. So just to exit from VS Code for a second. So I'm done in VS Code. I have my two agents. I just want to show you inside of our Foundry portal that those agents have been committed and they're ready to use. So I just logged into Foundry portal, and we have a lot of the same options here, but I'm going to go to build. And here's our two agents right here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the English to Spanish, and this has all of the configurations. I can even modify this right now through VS Code. So once again, going into Foundry, I can basically add whatever tools I want, or I can just modify this agent by going English to Spanish. And playground. And then I could basically give it an additional, like, always start conversation with a friendly greeting in Spanish. So I can make adjustments as needed, and all I need to do is just save to Foundry. So I'm just perpetually connected at this point to Foundry through my VS Code. I don't need to do anything elaborate to deploy or save these anymore. And through here, you would work with the agent as you normally would. We'll refresh just so we see our change. And then in details, of course, you would have everything that you would need. You can basically publish this to Teams or 365 Copilot. You have all the web app. So everything would be the same as you normally would inside of your tenant. So I think that's pretty much everything that I had to show you today. So if we have anything to revisit, though, I'm more than happy to.
So, James, thank you for that. That was great. There was a question that when building agents with Azure Foundry, what agent development framework does it use? And it's a two-parter, but it uses the Microsoft development framework, yes, in Foundry?
Yeah, I mean, I think behind the scenes, it was, the Azure Development Framework. It has had a couple of names. I think it used to be called the Bot Framework as well, even prior to that. But what Microsoft has done is they tried to make it as agnostic as as possible. So let's say we go back 10 years ago and everything is run in C#, and that's how you're going to build these agents. And it was proprietary to Microsoft. But now that framework, the bot framework, I believe, is open source now, and it supports a variety of languages. The two that's going to be exposed in here primarily, though, are Python and C#.
And then, thank you. And then the second part of the question was, does it support multiple frameworks, for example, Anthropic Agent SDK?
You know what? I will have to look that one up and get back to you on that.
Right,
I know that it has all of the Anthropic models under here. I know I'm having a little bit of trouble loading this, not sure why, but it does have the Anthropic models under it. Let's see if we can get to the models through build. Yeah, I don't want to click around too much and get lost in here. I apologize that my models aren't loading, but I can tell you with certainty that the Anthropic models are under there. The framework, I will have to take a note on that and get back to everyone.
I think, really, James, what you've shown is that once your infrastructure team has built out an area for you to work with, connecting your IDE or your Visual Studio Code to this environment to deploy and build agents is relatively it's not as complex once you have the environment, from building to deploying to using templates and then making them available in environments is pretty straightforward. Another question just came through. Can we test any of this out, or does this require a paid subscription? We only have GCC High M365, no Azure Foundry stuff. So this was, if you have GCC High M365, there is some capability to build agents, but if you don't have Foundry or Azure, your experience is a little bit different from how you would connect to the tools. So there is a way within the Azure side to set up test or free trials to be able to experiment with this with certain credit that are available. Could be a simple way to do it. Are there any other questions about the demo or future, if questions, right, James? Because what I saw in there is, we built simplistic, but in terms of data sources and, connecting like the Azure AI search or other capabilities, right, that's pretty simple through this as well. If you wanted to connect to a third-party data source.
Yeah, so connecting to a third-party data source, there, I would probably, before directly connecting from the agent to the third-party data source, I would probably look into AI search to consume that data first, because that would make it even easier to bring into the bot. But if you did need to connect to the third-party data source, you have full control over the code inside of here. So there's not going to be any sandboxing of the code or restrictions to what you can connect to.
Okay.
Unless you're GCC High or DoD or even GCC, you have to go and create an API application. So you have to put it inside your coding as well in order to connect to those cloud applications.
Correct. But you could also leverage that if, like, the primary thing that we've recommended to customers, and that's a great point, thank you, is using AI search within that environment to consume data, to bring it into Azure, to the GCC High environment itself, to then to leverage it. So there's if it's a Microsoft product, there's hundreds ways to do things. In GCC, there's a lot more security and requirements in terms of what data can be brought in. But that is a great suggestion.